The next speaker is Yuseo Kim. He's a senior researcher at the Research Institute of KEPCO, and KEPCO is a Korean electric power corporation. And KEPCO has been developing a large EV infrastructure in Korea, and they're really at the forefront of V2G, plug and charge, high power charging, and also smart charging.
Hello, everyone. I'm working in KEPCO Research Institute. First of all, due to the COVID-19, we have very tough days. I try to later, I want to see you in the real floor, offline. Let me start my presentation. Today, I would like to talk about 3 topics. First of all, I want to briefly explain our company and our charging business. Our company is the National Electric Power Utility funded by government. We have 6 power generation subsidiaries, and even though we do our own charging business, but we have charging service company as a subsidiary too. In Korea nowadays, around 120,000 EV have been sold so far, corresponding to the EV sales. There was installed over 40,000 public chargers. Among those, KEPCO has installed around 9,000 EVSE, and it contains charging station also. The red color on the right side indicates the number of our chargers. The DC charger is about 40% off, and AC charger is 17% off compared to all public chargers in Korea. And it doesn't include the private chargers because, for example, our office chargers. And we also have our own charging brand. As you can see, the left below, we call it KEPCO Plug. It's kind of app and charging service also. And the EV charging infrastructure has a very similar architecture as AMI for metering. But in my point of view, I think the importance of security in charging infrastructure is larger than other fields. One of the reasons is that charging infrastructure has more complex data exchange and their procedures and dynamic mechanisms. And sometimes the operating server directly control the EVSE's behavior. So, and the other reason is that EVSE will encounter a different EV every session or connection. So EVSE has also their electricity meter. So I think the security is mandatory for our charging infrastructure. And then I wrap up the introduction and let's talk about the PNC. I think the core technology of charging infrastructure has been changing, as you can see this slide. In the energy perspective, in bidirectional power transfer, we call the V2G, is trend nowadays. Then unmanned connection, kind of which feature wireless power transfer and robot charging and pantograph type charging are developing. And in order to commercialize both services, I think the plug and charge is necessary. And I put then the question mark because I don't know yet whether the new better solution is or not. Maybe some years later or 10 years later, maybe this kind of mechanism will be changed. And until now, we have just a one-way structure of charging infrastructure. But in the near future, charging system will combine kind of a new renewable energy devices. For example, ESS, the photovoltaic and wind turbine, and the other services which are the bidirectional power trading services. And according to these changes, I think the bunch of information will have been exchanged each other's. So I think it makes big data ecosystem and will give us lots of opportunity. Then according to our Korean national policy, EV charging infrastructure need to comply with 4 main criteria of security. The first thing is data encryption. EVSE always transmit user data and return value, and our charging infrastructure operating server transmit control the messages. So I think these need to be encrypted always. And the second thing is device authentication. Even though these devices are connected, kind of closed loop, which can be performed by using kind of digital certificates, the authentication method. And third one is digital signature. The metering value is very important to payment, and we sometimes use remotely update our charger software. So that kind of the firmware or software should be signed by trusted actor. So we need to use digital signature technology. And lastly, in Korea, we should use our own ARIA or C kind of cipher algorithm. This needs to be verified by our Korean the NIS organization. So we need to take this algorithm between EVSE and our operating server. So if we think about what kind of benefits could PNC bring to us, I think PNC is kind of a common and base technology for user convenience and VGI, vehicle grid integration, and charging business success. Even though there are several effects from PNC, as I described, right side of this slide, I dare think that the information business is most important, and I think the greatest possible impact in EV charging infrastructure market. Recent 2 years, we have developed and implemented full scale of ISO IC PNC demo systems. We co-work with Hyundai Kia Motors and many partners. As part of this project, KEPCO is preparing to launch this kind of system and services in near field. We also made the exact procedure for cross certificate between or among other V2 CA, and we proposed ISO IC 15118 Part 20, and it was accepted last year. In order to implement the end-to-end security from EV to our charging operating system, and to realize the PNC service, we need to make many documents. As you can see, we need to update or newly make all those, and some specifications are for our own business. The other things opened, and we try to make some standard for interoperability, and we try to support our partners. And finally, we can get over this kind of a complex procedure. The charging is just one step can be performed, just plug in. So we call it PNC. And for the global standard conformance and interoperability, so our team attended ISO 15118 test symposium last year and got great, I think successful result. Here's one of our demo video, maybe 2 minutes. I hopefully want to call this video title is from A to G of PNC. This step is we register my information for pull and charge. In this step, we need to input my PC ID of EV, and then make a contract data, and AMO send a CPS to the contract data, and then EV owner plug in the first time. EV and EVSE communicate each other by using ISO 15118. Now it's, I think, a select state, and the communication start. And then contract certificate installation and PNC authorization, and then AC charging. Even though we have a display on our AC EVSE, but in the communication protocol, we don't have any SOC information, so we just kind of image on our charger display. I forced to stop because AC charging is so long. And then after finish its charging, and we get some SMS from our KEPCO Plug app. So I get a result of a payment. I want to talk about future. We have a good test bed for PNC, so don't hesitate to expand Korean market, especially the other main OEM now preparing PNC services in Europe or North America. We can go with you, so please join us. Domestically, we already have planned to support our domestic partners, which are CPO, MO, and OEM also. And we are also ready to connect with the global digital root stakeholders, even CharIN, HubCheck, or SAE, and a lot, I want to say about our future will be changing to solve kind of a environmental problem. So transportation electrification is going to be accelerated, and to increase all participants' benefit. So VGI, kind of V2G or V2X, will become a general transaction of EV charging infrastructure. And so finally, this kind of flexible and dynamic data and energy exchanges, EV charging infrastructure will be the best information exchanging platform. So I obviously think that the PNC is the first step of this successful future. Thank you. This is end of my presentation.
Thank you, Yosio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question regarding your plug and charge, let's say, product. Is that something that will be only available to KEPCO, or can other charging point operators, e-mobility operators adopt or buy your product?
Actually, I told you before, we opened the API. We can support our API and our specification and our documentation. So nowadays, the other CPO or MO, the other charging business owner, they are does not prepared for implementing PNC, but we can help them. So we try to make some this kind of PNC and ISO 15118 kind of a business or technology will be upgraded. Yeah, I hopefully want to be. Maybe Jake, you are muted.
Let's say any ASEAN country like Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore would like to implement plug and charge, but they don't have any knowledge about plug and charge. Can they buy a package from KEPCO and then install that in their infrastructure?
Yeah, of course. We have our operating system, and we have software-based charger solutions, and we have a very large size of infrastructure, so we can help them just one solution.
Okay. So let's go now to the polling question.
Yeah.
And let's see what comes out. So what, in your opinion, would be the most important benefit plug and charge can bring to the charging infrastructure? The charging infrastructure security, or the data exchange between the EV and the charging infrastructure? So this is, I think, an important question, and this is a question that came from Yusuk. So he's also eager to know, what are you as a listener thinking on this point of view?
In my opinion.
No, let's just see what comes out, and
right.
then we will. All right. So 48% think security is the most important, while 52% think data exchange is the most important. So, what is your point of view on that?
Yeah, I think both things are important for charging infrastructure. But in the near future, or right now, the security is more important. But later then, the data exchange is more important than security.
Right. So basically the important layer of security needs to be there, so that data exchange can freely flow back and forward.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then we'll go to the next poly question, and then we'll have a meeting from all the speakers together. So the next polling question is basically same question as beginning. Has your understanding of PNC now become better, remained average, or still so-so? So what is the outcome? Oh, all right, 24, oh, 64. All right, not too bad. We basically have improved quite a lot from the so-so to from so-so. At the beginning was 24%, and now only 12% have a so-so understanding. And also the average has increased from 56% to 64%, and the knowledge very good went up from 21 to 24%. But I'm glad to see that the so-so knowledge has decreased by basically 50%. So this presentation has hopefully helped some of us to move forward, maybe with implementation of plug and charge. So let's now, all the panelists set up their cameras. And we can have a conversation. Okay, Jason, you are in. Nathan, are you still there? Okay, you still good. Hi. And Christian, are you there? Okay, Christian for the moment is not there. So Nathan, I have one question that came in after your presentation, and was, where did I write it? What is the extra cost of having plug and charge installed on a charger? That's question one. And the second question was, can a charger be upgraded to have plug and charge?
So question one around what does it cost? So As a manufacturer of the charger, yes, it costs us quite a lot of money in development costs. So we have to have, a software developer adhere to the standard, build the testing routine. Once it's implemented, it's not cost prohibitive, I don't think. It's kind of like any software. Once you have it up and running, it's just the maintenance and ongoing costs to run the software. I don't know what our commercial structure is yet, whether we will be charging for this or not. I don't believe at this stage. I think it's just going to be, as an expectation of a charger that it can be doing this service. You may have to be paying an ongoing fee to someone like Hubject, and maybe Christian can confirm, to use the PKI or to use the infrastructure on the back end. But from a charging perspective, no, I don't think there's any other extra costs. And then, is there a physical upgrade? I would have to confirm. I think there may be some things we need to be able to do on the charger itself, which is not, it will not be eligible on the chargers that are installed in the ground, but it will be factory included on the new chargers that are sold.
Okay, thank you. There is one red line I've all the time been hearing during all these presentations is information. And it seems that the information that is being exchanged between the EV and the rest of the world will become a commodity. So what is the benefit for the EV user to continue giving away his information? Jason, any idea? Your speaker is not on.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, basically, information seems to become a commodity. Also, in Yusyuk's presentation, you can see that the data becomes the most important part of plug and charge. So when I see all this data moving around, this basically means that this information is becoming is becoming a commodity, but a valuable commodity for the charging point operators, for the car manufacturers, for the grid operators. So what is the benefit for the poor EV owner to give away all his information like that?
We were very worried about that several years ago, up to the point where we blocked up where we set up a blockchain so that people would be able to sell their user data. But I don't think that the people who are generating the data, the customers, are as of yet very concerned about commoditizing or commodifying their data. So I think it's going to be very useful for all the other people who are collecting the data, for sure.
Sure, but somebody's making money with that data. It's like crowdsourcing. What happens with the EVs when they are charging? When is the optimum time to charge? I think I can imagine for a fleet operator, if he has this, if your customer is a fleet operator, you can really gain a lot of information on when is the optimum time to charge, when is the cheapest to charge, when is the highest point to charge your customer, and maybe even organize smart charging even before the car is plugged in. Christian, you have, or anybody else?
Yeah,
Want to come in?
a lot of the fleet management services are.
So yeah, I'll have a go and say that, look, I think it's the same as any kind of software service that you're getting, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, all of those things. People are not paying to use them; they're just getting a benefit of the experience. So, as long as the charging operator or the person who runs the charger can provide a better experience or some kind of improvement, I think that people are happy to pay with their data. It's not a decision they're making actively. It's just I prefer to have a good experience, and subconsciously, I guess you're paying with the data. I don't think people are going to be willing to pay extra to use the service, but they certainly will provide the data or their, the ability to, be providing those extra bits and pieces because the experience is better.
Christian, any input from your side?
Yeah, I try to do so. I think data is becoming a very important topic because we have just seen very impressive presentations, and all of them spoke about data and how important the data will become in the future when we talk about smart charging and integrating the battery of the electric vehicle into the electricity grid. But you're totally right, Chuck. I think right now we have different answers in place. Who is owning the data, so to say? I think there are differences in Europe and the US and in Asia.
Right.
I think it would be good to align on this because in the end, all EV drivers all over the world have the same need to experience the charging seamless as possible. And therefore, they need to get a kind of similar solution in place, which means we definitely need to solve the question, who's owning the data of the electric vehicle? Is it the customer, the driver? Is it the company? Is it the OEM? Is it someone else? I think that would be very, very helpful for sure.
Okay. Do you have any question to each other before I continue? Yusuk? You know Christian, I suppose?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Good man.
Yeah. And Jason, you have been working with Yusuk also, I suppose?
Yes.
You're not considered competitors in your field?
We are partners.
Partners?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But maybe, again, seeing so many great presentations.
For us, we have an opportunity to help everyone. We're also kind of behind the scenes. So, yeah, so I think
okay.
we're friendly with everyone.
Okay.
Maybe, gentlemen, one question from my side. What do you think is needed to really have plug and charge in place on a broader level? What do you think is the one thing we all need to change that the acceptance is being increased even more than nowadays?
Yusuk?
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
It's kind of different question. You mean what is kind of one of obstacle for the PNC, right?
Yeah.
As I implement when I implemented whole systems, there are a lot of actors. So there are, there are lots of point of errors. So if one system has error occurred, the PNC cannot be served enoughly. So we make for our real field business. So we made some kind of whitelist mechanisms, and the other the Euro make us some pull system, but we don't have any pull system because our market is very small, and the other OEM is not to be say they want to sell the PNC featured EV in our Korean market. So yeah. So when I first met Christian, he said to me, the PNC, the technology is very, very complex, but user very easily use charging network. So I think we need to solve these kind of complex things with our stakeholders and partners, and even the ISO 15118 and CharIN and SAE also. So I will try to do that. If everyone wants to be PNC function, our charging infrastructure. Okay.
There was a question coming in from one listener. I will read it. Can you give an estimate how much a charge point manufacturer operator would have to invest to develop the ISO 15118-20 to implement and test this plug and charge application?
I certainly couldn't give dollar figures in regards to the investment, but I can say that you will certainly need to have a software engineer or someone who understands the 15118 standard. So probably a CCS engineer, someone who would probably attend the testing symposiums, spend a considerable amount of time on developing it in-house to make sure it works with your hardware, and then build out the testing regime to make sure that you have interoperability with all the vehicles in the market. So it's certainly a commitment, but I can't give a dollar figure. Maybe Christian can help there, but look, you need to certainly be willing to commit a significant amount of time from your engineers.
When you say time, are you talking 1 year, half a year?
I'd have to ask Dion internally. I think he's been working on it for around a year, but I mean, not full time, just bits and pieces. But look, he's certainly dedicated a fair bit of his workload to developing this internally.
Okay. Jason, you had a point.
I think, yeah, So I was talking a lot about services versus solutions today, and one of the areas that we want to be able to bridge and be able to bring PNC to the market a little bit faster and make our contribution is by providing a library or a software toolkit to be able to provide for charge point providers or charge point manufacturers that we can update on their behalf and they can subscribe to as a service. So I think for everyone, in our interest is to get as many people involved into this ecosystem as possible, and so we're kind of thinking more towards being able to bridge some of that resources and time gap by being able to provide some of these as a SaaS model.
Okay. I have a question. I think it will be for Christian. They are asking me, wait, where was it? Polestar and Hyundai have recalled their cars in recent days. What is Hubject's testing procedure to prevent failure points and recalls when V2X or bidirectional is coming our way?
Well, very good question. As we just have discussed, and Yusuk also mentioned it, the complexity is being increased enormously in the last years due to new technologies, hardware, software we are using in the industry. And therefore, we have decided to set up V2G test lab here in Berlin in the first step, where everyone can come by and test his implementation, either on the hardware side for charging stations or on the hardware side for vehicles. And we hope that this helps to reduce complexity testing, especially on end-to-end. And we already did some great tests with some of our partners like IoTeca and others. But in general, I think that will be definitely one of the key skills we need to master in the next years, to have proper end-to-end testing possibilities in place. Because also we have seen that even if you're using standards, they are not defined in a way that they are 100% detailed. So therefore, in some cases, you still need to test what is happening in a specific combination with the vehicle and the charging station. And therefore, the only way to do it is have a proper testing algorithms and testing procedures in place.
We saw KEPCO's research center has a very nice testing facilities for plug and charge. So assume that Hyundai would drive with their car to that testing facility, do the tests, everything works fine. If that car comes to your facility, will the results be the same, or could there be deviations?
You mean the other OEM or Hyundai?
Yeah, no. So let's say I have a Hyundai car, goes to your facility, does a test, and then it goes to the facility of Christian, of Object. Will the test results be the same, or could there be differences?
I think same result, because
Same results. Okay.
Yeah, I trust that.
Okay. Good. I want the last question to go for the polling. Is it possible to launch that question? Then in the meantime, I will ask another question to the panelists. So this goes about ability to roam between operators or ease of payment. What, in your opinion, is the most important? And there was a reaction coming in from Diego Garcia from the Copper Alliance, and he was surprised to see that only 58% of the audience was thinking that plug and charge would become mainstream. So he was asking to you, the speakers, what do you think of this outcome? That only 58% of the people thought that plug and charge would become mainstream. Nathan?
Look, I think it depends on the vehicle compatibility. So you're just seeing some vehicles start to hit the market now with the compatibility, but 2-3 years from now, when most vehicles in the market that are being sold will be plug and charge compatible, I think then you have much more probability or likelihood that these vehicles and the standard gets implemented more broadly and adopted more broadly. I think it's very hard to say when you only have a limited number of vehicles on the road that are compatible. I think we're a few years away from seeing really what plug and charge can do and get really interesting use cases and start to see people really use it in new and interesting ways.
Okay. Jason and Yosio, and your country, plug and charge seems to be already implemented quite well. How is the reaction from the EV owners?
No, I wouldn't say it's implemented quite yet. I think 2021 is going to be the first surge of implementation here for plug and charge. Anything that's new, I think it takes time for people to kind of be able to incorporate. And I think what Nathan said was really right on for me. The OEMs really need to be able to get cars that can do this on the road. And then I think the charger makers, the charge point operators, and then the mobility operators who, in theory, have the most to gain from plug and charge by offering the convenience directly to their customers. I think it'll be able to pick up momentum, but it's kind of hard for a lot of us to imagine it at this point in time.
Okay. I just saw the outcome of the polling question. Ease of payment is winning over roaming. And in my opinion, I would have thought that the anxiety of knowing where to charge would be much higher. So I would expect that people would really choose for roaming so that they're always sure they can charge anywhere where they drive and they don't need to worry too much. So I'm a little bit surprised about this result. What is it? What do you think about this feedback? Yusuk?
Yeah.
What do you think about this feedback? That roaming is not really so important versus ease of payment.
Actually, in our country, the real-time roaming is very needed. So, in my opinion, the roaming of the authentication is more important than the ease of payment. I think the payment service is very different. It's the owner prefer what the owner prefer what they want to use. but the roaming is essential perspective of charging service. So,
Right.
so I think the roaming is most important thing.
Nathan, you're from Australia, such a big country. So I think roaming would be essential to be able to go from one point of the country to another.
Well, I mean, in Australia, yes, you're right. We have a big country. We don't have many charging networks, though. So I think maybe in Asia, for CharIN Asia, it's maybe less of a priority just because we have less charging networks. So what we see in Europe is there's many charging networks, and they're very easy to cross borders. Roaming is extremely important. In Australia, we have maybe 5 charging networks. It's not that difficult for them to talk to each other and establish roaming agreements. But I think over time, when there's much more prevalent networks and more number of networks, then roaming becomes much more important, especially for the driver to make sure they have a good experience across different networks. But we're in the early stages, and there's not heaps and heaps of networks. Oftentimes, there's country-based networks. It's maybe less clearly important, but I think over time it grows in importance massively.
Okay, Jason, one last thought.
It doesn't really surprise me. I think the convenience part is probably the more important topic at the moment. And also, you have to remember, we're not Europe. We can't really cross borders here in Asia. We're in South Korea, for example, where there isn't a single country that we can get to without going through North Korea or China. So I imagine that a lot of other countries in the area are kind of in the same predicament. So the local charging stations can be kind of kept in control, but I think the idea of roaming still becomes a really important issue because cars are never just sold in the countries that they're manufactured. Chargers are never just sold in the countries that they're manufactured.
Right.
They need to be able to work in all of these different other territories. So it's still a really important issue for scalability, security, interoperability. Those are all really important topics that we all have to kind of figure out together.
Okay, so I would like to thank all of you for taking out the time to speak with us. I would also like to thank the audience to speak with us. And next week we will have a last session where you will be automatically registered because you have been to this session. And here we will be talking about e-mobility in Hong Kong, in Singapore, Thailand, and India. So the EV associations from those 4 different countries will come with their experience of what is happening in their country. So I hope you will be joining us again very soon. Thank you very much for all of you. Thank you.